incapable of knowing her own mind. "Why should you think that?" Valda asked, and now the defiance was back in her voice. The Comte smiled. "You have been brought up very strictly," he said, "and although you have travelled a certain amount, you have never done anything on your own." "That is not my fault," Valda retorted. "I am not suggesting it is a fault," the Comte replied. "In fact, I believe it to have been eminently sensible. But the fact remains that you have never chosen a gown without the help of your mother. You would have no idea of how to travel from here to Paris without a courier. Do you really imagine, therefore, that you are capable of choosing wisely the man to whom you will be married for the rest of your life?" "If I leave the choice to you, how can you possibly know if we will be suited to each other when we are together?" Valda asked. "Suppose I conceived a violent hatred for him." "In which case I would obviously not make you marry him, however far the arrangements had proceeded," the Comte answered. "But I promise you, Valda, because I know you so well and because I love you, I shall choose a man who has all the qualities that I think desirable in your husband." "I cannot believe there are many paragons waiting about for me to fall into their arms," Valda said sarcastically. "If they are so exceptional, why are they not married already?" The Comte sighed. "I am not going to pretend to you, Valda, because you are far too intelligent, that the nobleman who I consider for you as a husband will not find your fortune the main attraction. At the same time, you are very lovely. I think a man would have to be made of granite not to fall in love with you. But suppose he does not?" Valda asked in a very low voice. She was thinking as she spoke that the average Frenchman had not only a wife but also a mistress. Her mother and her stepfather would have been horrified if they realized how much Valda knew of the intrigues and affaires de cour of their friends and acquaintances. But the servants, and even her governesses, had always talked in front of children as if they were deaf, and because Valda was interested, she carefully gave no indication, which might have made them suspicious, that she was listening to their gossip. The Comte de Merlimont and his attractive English wife filled their house in Paris and their various chateaux in France with the gay, sophisticated, brilliant personalities of the social world. Valda, being still in the schoolroom, was not allowed to mix with their guests, except for an hour a day when she came down to the salon at 5 o'clock. It was when they were in London that she and her mother had tea together, English style, but in France the ladies merely sat about chattering or working at their embroidery. Having greeted Valda in a somewhat condescending manner, they would return to the spicy gossip that had amused them before her entrance. Valda would listen and store away in her memory the various items that she overheard. "La Marquise has a new cher ami. He is very charming and very attentive, but Madame Boyer is livid. He was her property until La Marquise cast her eyes on him. Have you heard that the Comte de Rougemont came home unexpectedly the other night and was furious to find Pierre alone with his wife? One can hardly imagine the Comte as a jealous husband, but perhaps now he knows what other men have suffered where he himself is concerned. I saw Jacques last week. He was with that fascinating creature from the Folies Bergère. They say he has set her up in style in the Rue Saint-Honoré, with a carriage and a pair of horses, the envy of all Paris. He is lucky he can afford it." At first, such information seemed meaningless, but gradually the stories fitted like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle into a picture of society which was supplemented by some of the books Valda read. Her mother or her governesses would not have approved of these books, but she found them in her stepfather's sitting room and took them up to her bedroom to read at night after her lights had been put out and she was supposed to be asleep. She read about love, and as she grew older, and it was time for her to enter the social world, she told herself that it was love she would seek from a man. Because she was extremely fond of her stepfather, and he and her mother were so happy together, it had never struck Valda that a time might come when he would suggest that she should marry, in the approved French fashion, a man chosen for her because they each had something to contribute to the union. Now she thought that her large fortune would ensure that her stepfather would look first among the marquises of ancient families, or perhaps someone like the Comte de Beau, whose antecedents went back far into the history of France. It was living in Provence that had convinced Valda more than anything else that she must marry for love. She had been